New Right Network. Mobilizing, countering the left, energizing the right. New Right Network, home of the New Right movement.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to New Right Network tonight. Your host, Brian Smith and
Kerry Smith,
giving you all the late-breaking news of the day, wrapping it all up, making sense of it all, exposing the fake news and giving you the real news. And today, what an explosive weekend we've had, and throughout the day of Monday. We're going to be talking about the economic numbers once again, some new numbers being tweeted out by Donald Trump and the White House, as well as some of the other cabinet members talking about and touting about the jobs numbers, information that they're not going to share with you on the mainstream media. One of the first things we're going to talk about, we're going to expose what may not be a false flag, this convoy that was set on fire in Venezuela last month. We'll get into that and expose all the details that the New York Times has actually let out a new video that shows a different angle. And the DNC is absolutely in a civil war. They're imploding. They have been hijacked with the young Democrats that are taking power, as well as some of the old ones who won't relinquish the power. We'll get into all that stuff as well. So to start out, let's talk about what's going on in Venezuela. Been with us for a while. You know exactly the Maduro regime that is a socialist communist regime that has absolutely destroyed what once was an up-and-coming country in the energy sector with all their natural oil and resources. And as we saw Hugo Chavez destroy this country during the early 2000s, and then his successor, Maduro, union bus driver who has taken over and driven the country into a bridge abutment. So,
yeah.
So do we play the video footage first, or do you want to kind of set this up a little bit, Kerry? Because you've seen the video as well.
Well, and let's just backtrack a little bit. How did we get here? Remember, this is a communist regime, socialism. We need to make sure that people understand why we talk about this. Why is Venezuela in the news with anybody in America? Conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. This is a communist regime. It started with Chavez, and who basically, turned the country into a socialist country. We have his successor, Maduro, who's basically just taking the torch. And this is how communism always works. It just goes down the line with all these communist premiers, kind of like the Soviet Union was, and all the other communist regimes out there. There's a total absence of any kind of real democracy and freedoms for its people. And so here we are, fast forward, what happens to every single communist regime? Communism, every single time it's tried, ends in massive poverty, massive death, massive destruction.
Right. And the word communism versus socialism, we just making this point once again. Socialism is the vehicle that ends up in communism every single time. Alan West tweeted out over the weekend that socialism has never succeeded anywhere it has ever tried in all of human recorded history. And now we see, go back to Hugo Chavez, where he was elected on the platform that the Democrats use. I'm going to fight for you. I'm fighting for the working class people. I'm in your camp. He was very charismatic. He's loved by celebrities and other world leaders. And as he rose to power and widely accepted by the people, he then didn't want to leave power and decided to change their amendment to where he could stay as in power forever. And then as chance would have it, he catches the cancer, couldn't beat it, dies off early. And then Maduro, the successor, regardless, if you look at the numbers, whether Maduro took office or not at this point in time, when Hugo Chavez died, it was already falling apart. The economic misery was just really, really bad in Venezuela. And so just the fact that Maduro took over, I think made it run faster.
And I would point this out too. It's not about Maduro and it's not about Chavez. Communism doesn't work, period. No, it could have been me. It could have been Brian. It could have been you at home. thrown into the position of the leader, the top dog of a communist regime, and you are destined to fail, right? And so what really happens, very simple in Venezuela, was that market forces didn't exist because of the communist economy there. And so the market forces were not there to counteract the different economic issues that popped up, which caused massive poverty and famine. And that's what happens every time. Anytime there's a change or something happens in a capitalist society, you have market forces that will correct that, and then you're okay. When you get socialism involved or communism involved, that's where things go down. And just an example in America where that's happened, just one of many examples where socialism causes an ongoing crisis, would be like the Great Depression back in the 30s. It was actually we all know that FDR was essentially communism light. Basically, our president was a socialist, where it was his policies that prolonged the depression for many, many years. We had the exact same events happen in American history that led to our Great Depression in the 30s, happened prior to that, but without the communism, we were able to recover much, much faster, lightning speed. And so that's the difference between capitalism and socialism.
Well, he's absolutely embraced all the policies that any Marxist would embrace. The Lenins, the Trotsky. This is what he's embraced. Every decision he has made has been just one awful decision after another.
You're talking about Maduro, right?
Right. Similar to the Democrats and their winners and losers, and how Obama would pick a winner and pick a loser, and they always seemed to wind up be losers. Everyone he would pick, whether it be a Solyndra pick or a decision to enact certain policies, they always had negative effects. And this is nothing different with Maduro. It's the exact same thing. It's so bad, folks, that there were dogs that were running the streets because people couldn't feed their animals. And then all of a sudden the dogs went missing because the people started to eat the dogs. And then we heard reports last year where major cities are running out of water. Folks, when you've got major cities running out of water,
people are days from death. You have a few days to live if you don't have fresh water to drink.
Absolutely. And at first, the complaint was that the middle class was having all the money, and so they destroyed the middle class. And then the poorest people realized, well, now that the middle class is destroyed, now we're all destroyed. And it was just one domino effect after another. And so we're seeing right now, as Donald Trump, the capitalist president, if you will, Donald Trump embracing the opposition to Maduro, which is a good thing. Anything opposite of the horrendous situation in Venezuela has got to be good. And now we've got Maduro not relinquishing power, blocking humanitarian aid. There was a convoy of 4 trucks that showed up with humanitarian aid last month. One caught fire, the rest of them burnt down, and the tweets started flying out from everywhere.
Right. It basically was originally called a false flag. You got one side that's either accusing them of falsely, fake news, and the other one calling them fake news for tweeting out a false flag as though it was not a false flag. So we actually have a video, right? That will kind of shed some light on what really happened, because that's what we really want to know. I kind of have a problem with manipulating our audience by trying to push a narrative that might not be fully truthful. We want to get you exactly what really happened, or at least to the best of what we can interpret. And then you guys can make up your judgment after that. And, and I'm not saying that if somebody tweets out something that's false about what really happened, you should go on a hate, campaign against them. I'm just saying that just know what the truth is.
Absolutely. So the New York Times has unveiled unseen footage. They put together a 5-minute clip, bash the Trump administration or to bash conservatives, claiming that it was Maduro's regime that set the convoy on fire. But regardless, here's the clip.
The political and economic crisis gripping the country. Senior U.S. officials immediately seized on the incident, blaming President Maduro and his supporters for intentionally torching the convoy. How did we get here? The Venezuelan crisis came to a head in early 2019, when opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself president in a bid to unseat Nicolas Maduro, whose authoritarian rule and economic mismanagement resulted in searing poverty. Backed by the US, Guaido mobilized his followers to bring American aid into Venezuela, but Maduro blocked border crossings and denied entry. On February 23rd, 4 aid trucks arrived at a bridge on the Colombian side of the border. Guaido supporters cleared a path and drove the trucks toward Venezuela. Security forces repelled them, firing tear gas and rubber bullets. We obtained previously unseen TV footage that fills this gap and tells a more complicated story. The protester approaches from here, behind the third truck. He launches one Molotov, but the second one separates, and the burning rag veers off toward the trucks, not the police. She takes the same route as the protester who threw the Molotov, and points her camera in the direction the rag went. A Venezuelan journalist tweeted this report, blaming Maduro. 12 minutes later, Senator Marco Rubio retweeted the unsubstantiated claim. National Security Advisor John Bolton weighed in soon after, and then USAID Administrator Mark Green claimed that Maduro had ordered the burning. Secretary of State Pompeo tweeted out the same visuals that evening. None of the U.S. officials offered any definitive evidence supporting their claim.
As you can see from that video and hear from that video, she's trying to paint this picture that since the Maduro regime did not set the fire, did not set the trucks or the aid on fire, that everything that's being said like that is fake news and you shouldn't listen to it and all that kind of stuff. But she fails to realize that the thing would have never burnt down if it wasn't for the fact that they were opposing. First of all, she ignores the fact that it was not being allowed in her country in the first place.
Right.
Isn't that equivalent to burning it down? What difference is it between it being burnt down and not getting aid because it burnt down, and not getting the aid because you use physical force to prevent it from coming into the country? To me, there's only one slight little difference, and that is that there's something a little bit more malicious about willfully setting something on fire. It's kind of like, I'm just going to go and outwardly destroy this. And I can see by the video, and you saw it too, that I agree with her assessment that it was not lit on fire by the Maduro regime. But you're going to hear people who are isolationist Trump supporters, MAGA people, some of whom are very close friends of mine, tell you that it was a false flag. The actions that the Maduro regime took to prevent this aid from coming into the country, which that alone would be equivalent to it being put on fire anyway, because it's not being allowed in. The fact that they even were there stopping this from coming in caused it to be put on fire, because the Molotov cocktails were only thrown because there was a protest going on. I would not be advocating for throwing Molotov cocktails. Molotov cocktails only get thrown when the object of your rioting is there to do so. And the only reason they were there was to prevent the aid from coming in. So they're not blameless at all. So I find it a little bit short-sighted and disturbing a little bit that it seems like there's an alignment between isolationist Trump supporters who don't want us intervening and those who are propping up the Maduro regime. We need to be careful about how we're going to line this. Why don't we just tell the truth? Why don't we just say, okay, it's not a false flag? And by the way, let me explain a false flag for those of you that may not know. The false reporting would be that the Maduro regime lit this on fire when in fact the rioters purposely set this on fire in order to blame the Maduro regime. Right. That is the textbook definition of a false flag. But you can see in the video that this was simply an accident.
Other than just watching it, looking at it, and seeing for myself with my own eyes that the guy threw the Molotov cocktail and the rag flew out and it went in the direction of where the fire started.
And to be clear, to be 100% clear, he threw the Molotov cocktail at the police.
The barricade, right, at the cops and the barricade.
And the rag that was on fire, when it flew out and ended up hitting the trucks that caught on fire, that was not the intention of the person throwing the Molotov cocktail.
Well, clearly not, because the first one that he threw went in the direction he wanted it to go. And so he decided to go ahead, grab a second and throw it even faster. And you can see the wind.
In the same direction.
And you can see the wind grab and pull the rag out and throw it to the side. Folks, What is on display here is socialism, upheaval, a civil war, if you will. This is how this ends every single time. And why are we so concerned as American citizens? We are concerned about Venezuela for multiple reasons, humanitarian, moral reasons. We cannot allow socialism and communism to exist in the Americas at the same time that we're a capitalist society. These two, they can't exist on the same continent. It's just not possible. And so if they're going to be communist, take Cuba, for example, still communist dictatorship, they are suffering and have been suffering for the last 60, 70 years. I mean, they live in a time travel back to 1950s, while like America, we have all the fruits of 2019. So these two cannot exist. We've got to bring Venezuela back up into the fold in a way, and I don't know how that's going to happen. I do not advocate for a military intervention, but somehow, some way, we've got to bring Venezuela back to the capitalist side.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Trump supporters that are isolationists that are saying that we should not be intervening in other countries, and I'm with them. I really feel that. I mean, we had Vietnam was it'd be a misnomer to say that we improperly intervened there, because we were actually preventing the communist spread of the Soviet Union back then, and I think that was definitely, for people to think of Vietnam outside of the context of the Cold War, is just a huge disservice to the whole history of the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and all that kind of stuff. But with Vietnam, that was the start of people getting upset with us intervening in these proxy wars. Then you have people don't even remember Afghanistan. I don't even know how many Americans may or may not have died in the Afghan war between Afghanistan and the Soviet Union. But we had turned Afghanistan into the Soviet Union's Vietnam. That's how that was characterized. And then fast forward to the Gulf War, and then you have Afghanistan was a response to 9/11, which people seem to stomach that okay. But then it seems like this never-ending war in the Middle East, and people, Trump supporters, MAGA people, are just fed up with all the interventionism. And I'm with you on that. I think we shouldn't, but that doesn't mean that we completely ignore the people that are fighting communism in Venezuela. Do we send troops there? No, but I don't think that that's even on the table. I don't understand why people who are Trump supporters worry about what decisions Trump might make on this, because I don't think that the worst case scenario is on the table. It's not like, the same people were upset about sending 69 missiles, I think it was cruise missiles, to Syria with the gas attack. I'm actually with you on that. I think that maybe false flag issue may have been the case there. Trump may have been manipulated to intervene, and he may have fell on the wrong side. Who knows? I don't trust the intelligence community at all. I think the very same people that convinced him to send 69 cruise missiles into Syria are the same people that are actively engaged in the coup d'etat of the same damn president. Come on, people. But when it comes to Venezuela, we can't assume that we're just going to send in a massive invasionary force or something like that. It's going to be that we aid those opposing communism, and we need to embrace that, because the same war that they're going through right now, and the same war, it's like a civil war, the same kind of civil war and civil unrest that's happening in France is the same thing that we're battling here when we get into political engagements between the MAGA movement and the establishment left, or Rhino Party, or what do we call them, the Uniparty.
Right.
And sure, it hasn't gotten totally violent like that, although it has in some cases. When you look at Antifa versus free speech marches versus Antifa, it does sometimes get violent, but it's all the same thing. So globally, there is a MAGA movement, and we need to not just ignore that because we're also nationalists.
Right. No, absolutely. Marco Rubio tweeted out over the weekend, reports tonight out of Venezuela are like a horror movie. Total darkness, no electricity, running water, or cell phone coverage. Food spoiling, patients dying in hospitals, looting of homes and businesses, armed hashtag Maduro regime gangs terrorizing people. Please pray for Venezuela. And that's a fact, folks. There's video on the ground of these Maduro gangs that ride around on motorcycles and literally terrorize people in the streets. That's what's truly going on the ground there. And as you mentioned, France. And this is why we talk out about this, and this is why we talk out against this, because these countries may never have an ability to come back. France, I'm sorry, guys. I don't think you're going to be able to come back from this one. Brexit? Somebody posted that there's a Brexit vote or Brexit in 250 days. I'm sorry. If we can't beat the deep state in America, because we're much further along than you guys in Britain and in France and in Venezuela, obviously, we're much further along in a free society where we have a constitution that we can freely speak. As I speak today, we can freely speak. And our Second Amendment, the right to carry. You don't have those rights in Great Britain. You don't have those rights in France. So to say that you guys are going to make a turnaround, I don't know how that's going to be possible. But we're showing people on the show, we're showing everybody what is going on in Venezuela, what is going on in France with the yellow vests. This is out of control, folks. Sarah Abdullah, her handle on Twitter is at SAHOURAXO. Tear gas everywhere as thousands of yellow vest protesters hit the streets in France for the 17th week in a row.
I mean, it's almost pretty much anarchy there.
Yes.
But it's not just pure anarchy, like nothing, like it's just total chaos. You still have these two different sides that are fighting each other, and you're talking about the left and the right. So we need to be really careful about ignoring it and just burying our head in the sand, because we are in the earlier stages of something that could go down that road if we let it, or we're not careful and we don't oppose leftists in a peaceful way now. It could get to the point where we're so oppressed that we end up having to don yellow vests, Molotov cocktails, and all that kind of stuff. And luckily, because we have the right to bear arms, we should be able to arm ourselves and all that kind of stuff. We're nowhere near that yet, but we are certainly on the path. And some people have said that we are in a Cold War right now. It's just a matter of how far that goes, and will it remain peaceful and political for now, and not escalate into too much violence in the future. But we need to watch these things and support those who have our ideology, because if we don't get everybody's mind right on freedom, individual freedom, and rights for mankind, then we're always going to be opposing this somewhere. We could end up in another Cold War with another nation.
Right, absolutely. And as we've seen here recently, Italy electing what they're referring to as their Trump, nationalism, Italy being number one, Italy first in their minds. That's an excellent thing.
Did you see that ridiculous statue of Trump they had there? He looked like a warrior. It was like 6 stories tall, and it was animatronic. It was like, it had a sword. Did you see that one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
God.
absolutely. That's incredible. And they've got to think about their country first and deal with that. And France, take a look at the video, folks. I've got no other words. I know we don't bring up France much on the show, and I know this has been going on for a long time now. But as you can see in the video clip, just rioting, taken to the streets, lots of tear gas. There's another video clip where the cops and riot gear are actually physically beating the living snot out of a yellow vest that's just laying there on the ground. I believe it.
Yeah, that's so sad. That's so sad that stuff is happening. And man, we need to at least show emotional support, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but just know that when Trump chimes in on this stuff, that doesn't mean he's taken all the steps to put together a giant military force to go do some sort of a proxy war in what essentially is a civil war in another country. I know Trump well enough to know and trust that that's not going to happen. So if it does happen, I'm totally with you on opposing those actions. But don't just assume that the ball has gotten rolled on that stuff and that we need to oppose him now simply because he's speaking up in solidarity with the protesters.
Right. And you've got a president that says, bring our troops back. Folks, listen to his words and believe what he says. Promises made, promises kept. Okay, let's go juxtapose. We've just showed you 3 real world examples of what socialism, communism, absolutely France is in a socialist type situation, and so is Great Britain. Now let's look at America. And you folks remember during CPAC, Michelle Malkin calling out the ghost of John McCain for the GOP allowing illegal immigrants to come across the border to the tune of tens of millions. Some people have put it up to 40 million illegals in our country working and taking jobs that Americans could have. And so she's catching fire for that. And she tweeted out over the weekend, "No, I do not apologize. The McCain, Ryan, chamber of cheap labor wing of the GOP needs to apologize to America."
Awesome.
I mean, there's no other way to put it, but that's absolutely true. She's fighting back. Us conservatives need to fight back verbally, not physically, but verbally. We have to stand our ground when it comes to social media. When you're right, you're right. And don't ever apologize to these people. Don't be an apologist. That was Obama. Obama was the apologist. And you saw how bad that ended up. Obama versus Trump.
He has a lot of support worldwide because of his courage, of his convictions. He stands up for what he thinks is right. And people see that. And people are like, man, I wish we had a leader that would do that. And that's why you see this movement of people trying to elect people that are like Trump, or at least these people are acting like Trump. And that's a good thing. The truth will come out whether they are a true nationalist. And people use the word populist. I think that's a kind of a dangerous word. But, somebody who's has popular ideals for their country, that is going to focus on their people in their country first, and not so much of this international globalist stuff that's going on. Right. I don't think it's necessary, and it's not working.
Right. Obama versus Trump. I mean, it's on display, folks. So Donald Trump tweeting out, more people are working today in the United States, 158 million, than at any time in our country's history. That's a big deal. At the White House, and you follow these folks at White House. Absolutely have to follow it because you're getting real news here. At White House, public optimism in their personal economy has hit a 16-year high under President Trump. The job market doesn't get much better than this. Well, I think Trump begs to differ. Trump says we've got a long way to go and there's much more to come, so I'm really excited about that. And you've got Real Saavedra at Real Saavedra, Real Saavedra, Socialist Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat, New York, suggest former President Ronald Reagan was a racist and claims he pitted the white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans to screw over all working class Americans. The video clip, please.
And one perfect example, I think a perfect example of how special interests and the powerful have pitted white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans in order to just screw over all working class Americans is Reaganism in the 80s when he started talking about welfare queens. Mm-hmm. So you think about this image, welfare queens. And what he was really trying to talk about was this, he was painting this photo. He's painting this like really resentful vision of essentially black women who were doing nothing, that were sucks on our country, right? And it's this whole tragedy of the commons type of thinking where it's like, because this one specific group of people that you are already kind of subconsciously primed to resent, you give them a different reason that's not explicit racism, but still rooted in a racist caricature. It gives people a logical reason to say, oh yeah, no, toss out the whole social safety net.
Yeah.
And in that clip, she's attempting to say that what we're living in now had started with Reagan, if you will, and as he's racist and Trump being racist and ruined economy. I mean, I know somebody scripted it for.
We were kids during the Reagan administration. Now, first, let's just throw this out there, because we should throw it out there every single episode of Smith Radio, Smith TV.
Today, I was compelled to sit down and write this letter, not to anyone in particular, maybe even just for myself, but as a Black female executive at the Trump Organization, I could no longer remain silent about the repeated and reprehensible attempts to align my boss and his family with racist hate-mongering groups, campaigns, and messaging. As the daughter of a man born in Birmingham, Alabama, who rose against all odds to become one of the most established and respected doctors at Yale University, there is no amount of money in the world that could buy my loyalty to a family that subscribed to such intolerant and bigoted ideologies. The Trump family that I know is, without question, one of the most generous, compassionate, and philanthropic families I've ever had the privilege of knowing and the honor to call friends. They have been incredibly loyal to me and to the countless dedicated people they employ around the world, hiring more minority and female executives than any other company for which I've ever worked. To equate racism with my boss's call for a temporary moratorium on a flawed immigration system that radical Islamic terrorists continue to exploit, or the construction of an impassable wall to protect our borders from the influx of illegal drugs, is not only incendiary, it's wholly irresponsible and only serves to embolden the very hatred these draconian groups espouse. What common sense American wants another terrorist attack on our soil, or to perpetuate this country's rampant drug epidemic? But to compare my boss to Adolf Hitler, simply to spin your own political agenda or social media punchline, is a personal affront to the extermination of over 6 million Jews and trivializes one of the worst acts of human genocide this world has ever seen. Rest assured, I am a highly intelligent, free-thinking, and independent woman. My opinions and decisions are based solely in fact, not fiction, speculation, assumption, or hearsay. I do not vote based upon the color of my skin, nor the signature on my paycheck. I judge my friends and forge my allegiances from direct personal interaction and moral character. That said, there is no higher barometer by which to measure oneself than the one continually set by this family and their spouses, and I should know. Like many Americans, I have struggled with substance abuse and addiction. The Trump family has stood by me through immensely difficult times without hesitation or concern for their own reputation by association. They continue to trust me with every aspect of their lives and the lives of their families. They invite me into their homes and welcome me at their family gatherings. For the past 6 years, I have held an executive position as it pertains to the distribution of their charitable funds, and they have charged me to identify worthy and altruistic missions. I could not be more humbled. This is the Trump family that I know. Only up until now, it's all just been opposing campaign rhetoric and paid protesters. But then a letter came. And I thought to myself, who does this person think he is to threaten to kill somebody else's family? Any family. This family. My family. All because of a political race, a campaign. But then I realized that this isn't just a race to Mr. Trump. This isn't just a race to his family, nor to our veterans or the unemployed. And because of that, this family is willing to risk their own lives each and every day for the greater good of this country. But I would be lying if I said I didn't fear for them now. There is a movement sweeping this brave nation, and I am honored to have a front row seat to it on a daily basis. This country has spoken. My boss has justly earned the Republican nomination and broken voter registration records in countless states across America. This cannot be denied. He has brought this party together by drawing more Democrats, more independents, and more first-time voters into the GOP fold, and has earned more Republican votes than any other presidential candidate in modern history. That must be respected. To the skeptics who will undoubtedly claim that I'm doing this at the behest of the Trump family or with the promise of reward, I deliberately chose not to seek their approval nor counsel in advance of this video for fear that they would be more concerned for me and its potential viral ramifications than they would be for themselves, and the fact that, quite simply, this is the right thing to do. For me, it was an easy decision, just as voting for my boss, Donald J. Trump, should be an easy decision for you. God bless this family, God bless the voters, and God bless the United States of America.
Donald Trump is not a racist, and anybody who says that is falsely accusing. They've been falsely accusing for a long time, since before Trump even became the nominee. It's why he got elected, because people on the right are sick and tired of being falsely accused of racism. So keep calling us racist, keep calling Trump a racist. It's just going to get more and more Trump-like people or Trump allies elected into office across the board. So keep doing that. As far as Reagan being a racist, there was a lot of opposition to his presidency back in the 80s. It was very overwhelming. It was similar to Trump, not as bad, but there was a lot of opposition. They never called him a racist because that wasn't even. So you got to understand, this whole idea of throwing out demonstrable lies in mainstream media is a new phenomenon. And it started a little bit in 2008 and got a little bit worse. I remember Glenn Beck, after, I think it was 2008, both Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity said, "Oh, this is the year that the news media died."
Right.
Well, then 2012 came, and they were like, "Wow, we just resurrected it and killed it even worse." But things have gotten exponentially worse since then, because now they just come out and say lies that you can instantly fact check right on the fly. You either know already for 100% fact that what they're saying is a total lie, and you know the evidence that proves what they're saying is a lie, or they'll be fact checked in real time as it happens. And you see this constantly. Everything that they say is the opposite of truth. And Reagan didn't even need to deal with that back then. But that's why they didn't call him a racist, was because they didn't do that kind of stuff now. But they call Trump a racist because now we're living in a time where you just go out there and shovel false propaganda and package it up and put a little sticker on it that says this is real news.
Right.
And it's all fake.
No, it's CNN. I'm just, it's unbelievable to watch CNN and just not throw up in your mouth, realizing that how do you live with yourself, Don Lemon? How do you go home at night
with a paycheck?
Yes, with a paycheck, and really, really believe that you're making a positive difference in the world. It's just absolutely sickening. We got Donald Trump retweeting a bunch of folks over the weekend, which is really exciting. On Twitter, you got e-celebs, and then you have real celebrities like Jesse Waters. Donald Trump retweeted this tweet from Jesse Waters. Donald Trump's approval rating is at or near his highest level ever. The media is not being honest about what is happening in this country. That's why we do this show, because we know for a fact more outlets need to be doing this, reporting real news. And when you do that, people are going to find you. They're going to search you out, and they're going to find you. And for those of you that are new on the show, this is the New Right Network Tonight. New Right Network is the big tent of the America First movement, the MAGA movement, or the Keep America Great Again movement. Because after 2024, we've got to continue the movement and continue with real news exposing fake news. So follow us on Twitter at Smith Radio. That would be Carrie on that handle, and me as well as at Brian P. Smith. And for any information or anything you need to know of, go to smith.tv. You can hit the Patreon button, crush the other buttons that are there. There's all kinds of gear and stuff to get to help support the New Right Network Tonight. We do this on our own. This is on our own time, folks. And the incredible Patreons that have been with us for many years, we are absolutely, truly blessed to be able to do this for you and with you.
Absolutely, 100%. We super appreciate that.
And at Tim Runs His Mouth, I was kind of shocked that Donald Trump retweeted this one. But at Tim Runs His Mouth, Democrats so far in 2019, won't condemn anti-Semitism in the House of Representatives, do nothing against a racist governor who wore blackface and a Klan robe, do nothing against a lieutenant governor accused of sexual assault, investigate political opponents with no evidence, and are pro-infanticide. You're never going to hear that on mainstream media.
That's one of those tweets that you just got to drop the mic. You got to reply with the drop mic GIF or GIF. Is it GIF or GIF? I want to make sure I get that right because I will have DMs big time if I get that wrong.
I've always said GIF. I don't know.
Okay. I think I've always said GIF, and I don't know why, but I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for that.
Oh, and somebody, a bunch of y'all called me out on the last show.
Really?
Okay.
What'd you do?
The reason why the Right for Life March is in January is because that's when Roe v. Wade was decided upon. So
okay, so what did you say, and what did they say to you?
I said, I don't know why the hell you picked January in DC.
Gosh.
It's too cold.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is interesting. I actually didn't know that was the reason why they picked that date. But
see, now I can educate my children. I don't claim to know everything, and we're learning on the fly. If you guys been with us for a while, you know my personal take on Ann Coulter. I actually liked how she stood up for Trump in the beginning, but I've always had my reservations. And our good buddy Sam, years and years and years ago, said about Ann Coulter and Glenn Beck and some of the others that keep them at bay. They're not working so good. Keep them at bay. Watch out. Watch out. And as you can see in the past couple of years since Donald Trump's election, Ann Coulter, nonstop bash fest on our president. And it has been such a disservice. It has been so bad for our movement. And Donald Trump over the weekend, folks, the greatest president you've ever seen in your life, tweets out, wacky nut job Ann Coulter, who hasn't figured out that, despite all odds and an entire Democrat Party of far left radicals against me, not to mention certain Republicans who are sadly unwilling to fight, I am winning on the border. Major sections of the wall are being built, ... and went on for a couple of more tweets.
All right, so here's my take. Ann Coulter can go to hell. She is just a charlatan. She's a complete charlatan. When she first started criticizing Trump, my first thought was, okay, she's using a little bit of edge. She's using an edgy way to try to get Trump to second guess some of his decision making in a good way. So steer him in the right direction and to apply pressure where needed in order to get him to do the things that she approves of. But now I realize that she is dividing the base so bad that I get people all the time in my Twitter feed basically endorsing what she says and saying, I'm done with Trump. I'm done with Trump. If that's where we're going with this, where we're just going to be done with Trump because you think that the things that Ann is saying are true, which that's another thing. I don't think that what she's saying is accurate. Then she's obviously out for one thing, and that is to create the kind of controversy necessary to sell books.
Right.
That's what this does. This sells books.
Bill Kristol, anyone? Sam was always screaming. I told my parents probably about 10 years ago, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, I said, hey guys, you got to put this Bill Kristol at bay. Some of the things that he's saying.
Leftist. Yeah, remember, uniparty here, folks. Uniparty. Just because they have an R next to their name, just because they're introduced on CNN as a Republican, does not mean that they are somehow on Trump's side. Even if they could even espouse some of the same policies, like say conservative policies or libertarian policies on the air as Trump, which would make you think that they're allies. But in reality, it's all about power, centralized power for people who go into government over the people versus a decentralized republic, constitutional republic that the founders envisioned. That's what we're dealing with here. That's the two sides. You pick one or the other. And it seems like Ann Coulter is on the side of the Bill Kristols and all that, into thinking that she's somehow the original Trump supporter. because she came out on the Bill Maher show and said that Trump was going to win the nominee and the presidency way back in, I think, 2015 or early 2016, which somehow made her not only some sort of prognosticator, but also like the original Trump supporter. And it's just all a bunch of crap. She just said that she thought Trump was going to win because she wanted to win, was going to firebomb the whole system.
Right.
And that was going to be exciting to her.
Right.
She's just you know what she is? She's one of these ghetto ass drama queens that's all they care about. They will instigate fights. By the way, people, I'm a product of 12 years of inner city public education. I've seen tons of these ghetto ass drama queens. That's all they care about is creating drama and real fights. I'm talking vicious,
yes,
sometimes fist fights or big time dramatic arguments. You know, the profanity laden scream fest in public. And they instigate this stuff because it's entertaining to them. That's why they do this. That is Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter is she's just entertaining herself. She said that Trump was going to be the president, not because she particularly wanted him to, but she would just love for it to happen for sheer entertainment. She's just pathetic.
Right.
She's a pathetic human being. She means nothing to any of us. She means nothing to the country. All she is a ghetto ass drama queen. That's all she is. She's misinforming America. She's misinforming everybody. She makes it sound like Donald Trump is some sort of an emperor that can go out there and make all this stuff happen. She's ignoring Civics 101, where Congress is the one that creates laws, and that Donald Trump has to adhere to the laws or else he's against the law or he's breaking the law. So he has to adhere to the laws that are written not by him, but by Congress. And also anything that needs to be funded has to be, in general, goes through Congress because they control the purse strings. This executive order thing is the only bypass that he has to get anything done. He's being opposed by everybody. Right. And Ann Coulter wants to blame the lack of progress on him personally, when anybody who knows anything about how our government works clearly knows that he is largely completely innocent of all the lack of progress here.
Right, because there's a lot of blame to be held with Paul Rhino Ryan.
Yes.
I'm telling you, and all the mass exodus of the Republicans from office in 2018, all of them are to blame without a doubt in my mind. The Democrat Party, the other opposition to everything Donald Trump is doing, the Democrat Party has gaslit their followers for the last 25 to 30 years, doing a number on those that are raised up in the system, doing a number on those that vote Democrat, follow Democrat, and that are susceptible to being gaslit. And now we've got all the way up from Ocasio-Cortez being 29 and some of the other ones that have just newly elected, 37 years old. Folks, they are completely gaslit. They're in the party to win and take over the Democrat Party and then to take over Congress. There's an incredible video that just came out about Ocasio-Cortez, this by Jordan Peterson. Down in the show notes, you can see the link for the YouTube video. But I'm just going to summarize it real quick. It's about an 18-minute video. Lots of documentation, lots of information in there, and he goes through it really, really, really well. Just start out with the tweet that got me to it because I follow this individual, and you should too, at B-I-Z, woman for Trump. She tweeted this out with the link. Many have wondered how a 29-year-old bartender became out of nowhere to beat a 20-year politician, Joe Crowley, who was a candidate for House Speaker. This explains a lot and is terrifying. Watch and decide. The brains behind AOC by Jordan Peterson. Did a lot of incredible work, and he breaks it down into three different things. One, she did not run for Congress. AOC, Alexandria Cortez, was auditioned. She was submitted by her brother to this new organization, Justice Democrats, because he felt that she had that ability to do it. She's very charismatic. She's an actress. She's in the limelight, and she can handle that She can wow people. She can be whatever she is as long as she's scripted. So again, she did not run for Congress. They branded her. They did everything on the social media for her. Justice Democrats did everything for her to make this happen. I'm not upset that went down like that. There's no law that's broken that says you can't do that. It worked very, very well. What is your opinion on that first point?
I watched the video, and before I watched it, and even in the first minutes of watching it, I thought, "Oh gosh, do we have to go through this conspiracy theory crap?"
Right.
Come on, really? So watch the video, and you'll soon find out. There's actual video clips of AOC verifying that she auditioned for the part of running for Congresswoman of this district. And maybe it was any district. Maybe they're doing this across the country. Certainly would seem so. Maybe this was just a test case where they'll do it here and they'll do it across the country once they realize it worked. And she auditioned for the role. She said she did.
Now, do you have
the video?
Now, do you have a problem with that?
It's definitely out of the box thinking that I appreciate it. I appreciate out of the box thinking. Here we are. The Democrats said, "Hey, why are we leaving it to people, just your general average citizenry, for somebody to step up?"
It's not the Democrat Party that's saying this. Justice Democrats, Saul Alinsky organization that is completely outside the Democrat Party.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's creative. And it's interesting that you say that. I'm glad you pointed that out, because it makes sense now when you see these people like Dianne Feinstein viciously opposing them, because it didn't make any sense. If you look at all the things that we've seen happen either to AOC or with her or surrounding her, link in the description below. Definitely check that out. It's only 15 minutes long, which is great. It all makes sense. Hey, let's put an organization together and we'll do a casting call for this, which actually makes sense, because in the video, it talks about how the guy who's the real brains behind AOC, who is the policy genius, who can come up with the talking points and the policies needed in order to further the communist agenda, he doesn't have the charisma to go out there and run. So what if we have a puppet who can convince people that this person is so likable that I would love for them to be my representative, but then have them be manipulated by a puppet master who's the real policy wonk?
I had a flashback of the NSYNC boys and the Backstreet Boys.
That's exactly what it is.
And I'm looking at this, I'm saying, is that the puppet master in the background, there's no term limits to the puppet master. He can just continue to pick people and that they'll do his bidding at his will, because they pretty much are beholden to him. So that poses an issue.
I mean, they could have their own, and here's a little insider information that you guys aren't supposed to know. It's a little insider stuff. There are people in the MAGA movement who are trying to co-opt her, which actually is brilliant, because if she is simply just a puppet for some puppet master, then theoretically we could go in and say, "Hey, listen," literally, well, not literally, but figuratively, cut the strings of the puppet master.
Okay, and then he in the video talks about the puppet master and defers completely to her team, Corbin Trent, who is a Saul Alinsky guy, Alexandria Rojos ahead of Justice Democrats. She is a social justice warrior, and she's the one who came up with the Green New Deal. Principal politician or a pawn? Which is easier to manipulate? He goes over that in the video. Obviously, a pawn is very easy to manipulate. And again, you referenced Dianne Feinstein. Not that she's a principal politician, but that she is beholden to somebody else. So you can't go to Dianne Feinstein with the Green New Deal and say, sign it, because she needs to be reelected and she's got a different agenda. So go get somebody who's new, and that would be a case of Cortez. The people that are controlling her, that's the third aspect, are very, very dangerous individuals. The first one that comes to mind is Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. Originally set this all up to take over the Democrat National Committee. I
didn't agree with that part in the video. He's not a smart guy. I've been following Cenk for many years. I don't think he is a puppet master, but he's an idiot.
He did. Peterson made the comment that Cenk is not a very smart individual. He does say that.
He's a dunce.
Right. And he said that right off of the campaign of Bernie Sanders' loss, Cenk found Saikat Chakrabarti, who is one of the co-founders of Justice Democrats. He's a former Harvard graduate. And during the campaign, you saw the Bernie Sanders campaign. The
scales were tipped in the favor of Hillary Clinton because that's the DNC decides who they want to heavily favor.
Right.
And because they heavily favored Clinton, there was no way that Sanders had any chance.
Right. So this young Saikat Chakrabarti, you got to get into his mind and see what he's thinking and try and understand where he's coming from. He is a hardcore left-wing Saul Alinsky, and he's young. He's very young. And he saw firsthand what he was able to do with Bernie Sanders. And can you imagine how he felt? The betrayal of Bernie Sanders or the blaming of the Hillary Clintons or whatever, just absolute falling apart and not winning when they really had a good chance. Folks, they really did have a good chance of winning, which is very, very scary. So Cenk, according to the video, picks up Chakrabarti and a couple other guys. Zach Exley picks these two guys up, putting this thing together. Justice Democrats. It was a new path to save the soul of the Democrat Party. We will run strong progressives by the thousands. We're going to primary Democrats. We will replace the entire Congress. We want radical leftist socialist. And they went right after Crowley because they hated Crowley for the same reasons that they hate Dianne Feinstein. They can't be co-opted into moving the ball that was promised to move it to the left. They're just making those promises and never fulfilling them. So now you've got these new gaslit individuals that are like, yeah, well, we're going to vote you out of office and you're done.
Yeah, and you got to realize, too, that this is only possible today because of how far they've been able to go with the Department of Education. All this stuff first of all, the candidates, these young candidates and the young Harvard grad geniuses behind the scene could only push this stuff after being thoroughly indoctrinated their entire childhood. And that's not enough. You also need an electorate, a constituency, an entire population of people that when you start to espouse communist ideology, their initial subconscious reaction is, yes, that's true, right, and good. And the only way they can get there is through an entire childhood of indoctrination into the communist ideology, which is what's happening with the Department of Education today.
Right.
You need to be aware of that and oppose it.
Yep, absolutely. And Zach Exley is a Saul Alinsky guy. They're big tech guys. They'll run this 2020 game. Zach is a former Open Borders Foundation guy, which is a George Soros organization. So you cannot tell me that when Soros is nearby, that's where they're getting their money. And so here are the numbers. If you don't believe that it's possible to run a scheme like this, in 2018, this organization ran 79 candidates in the primary. Out of those 79 candidates, they won 24. And out of the 24 that ran, 7 won in the general election, and they're in Congress. And here's their names: Raul Gurjewala, Raul Khanna, Ion Presley, Pramila J.I. Apala, Rashida Tlaib, Ihan Omar, and of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Folks, this worked. It worked well. And it's very, very scary how these socialist, communist ideologies can take over the entire party and then attempt to win in Congress. We've got to fight back on this. And for those of you that have heard of the Young Turks, and I've always known this, but he mentions this in the video. There's a large Armenian community out in Los Angeles, and I worked with a guy that's Armenian, and he talked about this often. But the Young Turks, why would he choose that name? The Revolutionary Turks in 1911. slaughtered 1.5 million Armenian in the Armenian genocide. And then the other guy, Saikat, is wearing a Che Guevara style t-shirt. But the style of it that's on there, the face of it is a guy named Snub Habas Chandra Bose. And this from Wikipedia, so I'm not taking this from the video, this from Wikipedia, was an Indian nationalist whose defiant patriotism made him a hero in India, but whose attempt during World War II to rid India of British rule with the help of the Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan left a troubled legacy. These are anti-colonialists. That's what Cenk is. That's what these socialists are. They're anti-colonialist, and they look at America as if we colonized the Americas, as if this is a colonial America that needs to be removed.
Well, yeah, Great Britain did, but then we defeated them. As far as the Young Turks name is concerned, the Young Turks is all about the genocide of an entire people, right? So anybody who thinks that it's appropriate to call themselves the Young Turks in today's day and age would be equivalent to somebody saying, you know what, well, we're going to call ourselves the Nazis. Because from a genocidal point of view, it's about equivalent, right?
No, absolutely.
Both different groups did a full-blown genocide, so that's how I look at Cenk Younger and anybody who calls themselves the Young Turks.
Right. And in the video, he does bring up Dinesh D'Souza's movie in 2016, the one that he made, Obama, Love Him, Hate Him, You Don't Know Him. And that in the documentary of Dinesh D'Souza, he points this out, this anti-colonialist ideology that these leftists, that these Saul Alinsky types have. And that's what they want to do, is to tear down America. And then real quick to wrap up Ocasio-Cortez, very interesting, the video points out. Ocasio-Cortez said that she wanted to pay her staff a living wage, bring everybody up to $15 an hour, and lower the higher wages below $126,000. Why $126,000? Because if you are in Congress making $126,000 or more, you must disclose all outside money you earn. Under $126,000, you can now take hundreds of thousands of dollars from George Soros and not have to report it.
Oh, so that's the key.
You can double your wage.
More.
Yes.
Yeah, you actually earn more by cutting the top wage down. Wow.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
And over the weekend, the Democrats are just making one bad decision after another. Representative Dan Crenshaw tweeted out, "Today I offered a motion to recommit H.R. 1, reaffirming that only citizens of the United States should have the right to vote." The Democrats rejected it. Next time you go to the ballot box, keep that in mind. The future of the party is in cities like San Francisco where illegals can vote. Let that sink in. And the Democrats are attempting to pass, or may have already passed, a bill allowing 16-year-olds to vote.
Yeah, I mean, you know what the next step after that is? Instead of waiting until they come to our country to vote illegally, they're going to pass a resolution that allows anybody anywhere in the world to vote in our elections. They don't even have to come here.
Nope.
They can just cast a ballot from anywhere.
Just mail it in. And folks, you're listening to the fastest hour you'll spend with anybody right here on New Right Network tonight. Go to smith.tv, find out all the great stuff. And while you're there, you can watch Donald Trump's live Twitter feed so you don't miss a single tweet from Trump. Carrie's Twitter feed is there live as well, as so is mine. Crush the Patreon button, pick up some gear, help the New Right Network to move forward, get this going forward. We need to find a George Soros of the conservative party, folks, to help continue to move this, get this movement to continue moving forward. But until then, $1, $5, whatever you've been blessed with, and you're able to give, much appreciated. Thank you very much. And last words, Carrie.
Yeah, just make sure that you share this every time and set your alarm. Guys, you have a smartphone, set your alarm for 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. That way it just alerts you, oh, Smith Radio is on. Even if you're like, I'm in a bad place, I can't watch the whole thing, you can watch it later. But go ahead and share it right then and there and get back to what you were doing.
Right, and we are live on almost a dozen different outlets. There's no reason why not to find us. Over a dozen
Yep.
different outlets
Share,
live.
share, share. Yep. All right. See you guys.
All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.
You've been listening to New Right Network, mobilizing, countering, energizing. Online at newrightnetwork.com.